Hey, I'm Adam Doyle. I'm an artist and illustrator, and I'm also really interested in the subject of UFOs. So what I thought I would do is make a short video where I share with you recommendations for where to begin if you're interested in learning more about the subject, because there's a lot out there. So what I'll do is I'll suggest a book, a movie, a show, a podcast, and a website. Any or all of those will be really solid starting points to learn more about the subject. So to begin, I want to address areas or sources that aren't great for starting out, which might be, I think, a default for a lot of people, which is a place like Wikipedia or Reddit, which are great and I use all the time. However, when you're beginning to look into this subject, I think it's better to hold off on those until later. And the reason I say that is because, well, Wikipedia is very thorough, obviously, in covering pretty much all sources of human information that we've accumulated. When it comes to UFOs and to other paranormal, supernatural topics, the editors there tend to include a lot of sort of phrasing around, caveats around, this has not been proven, or, a lot of sort of like a skeptical buffering there. And that makes perfect sense because they want to be trusted, like Wikipedia, they want to be trusted as a source of information. And so they're not really fully invested in this topic yet because it's not fully, sanctioned and agreed upon by everybody. It's still obviously a bit on the fringe and contested and controversial. All that being said, the UFOs are real. They're real. It's true. So you want to learn more? Hold off on Wikipedia. And I'd say the same thing with Reddit, about Reddit, which I love and I use all the time. It has a lot going on. But the reason I say that, this is nothing against Reddit or the community at all. Anyone there will, I think, agree with me, which is that if you're going and you want to learn more about UFOs and what's going on, what you'll find there in the daily updates is a lot of imagery, photos and videos that's up for debate, and a lot of opinions, which is, it's fine if you're grounded and informed, but if you're just curious or just looking, trying to understand what's real, I don't think it's the best place for that. And mostly just because it's just, the opinions float to the top and the jokes float to the top, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of photos and videos and, oh, it's CGI. Oh, it's a balloon. It's a drone, right? There's a lot of that. And so you don't really know how to make heads or tails of it. So that's why I think, it's great, but just come back to it later. It's not the best, I think, for preliminary searching to understand this topic. That's it. So another thing that I'll just mention is, because the word belief is typically associated with this subject, I want to believe, famously, the poster from the X-Files. And I'd say that, let's be clear, this is really not about belief. Belief, implicit in belief, is something that can't be proven. I believe in love, I believe in God, I believe in, personally, I believe in art, right? And you can't be proven wrong when you have a belief. So that's why I think the word belief is just really not relevant to this topic, which does have evidence, can be proven, is factual. It's very mysterious. It's not fully understood for sure, but it is quite a deep rabbit hole. But there's a lot of information there, and it is demonstrably provable. So that's my suggestion, is to avoid belief. And also, it's frustrating when you trust prominent, intelligent people, and two people that come to mind are, science educator Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a great guy, and the host of Cosmos. He's really vocal and really understands he's an astrophysicist, so he's clearly a smart, informed guy. However, he also thinks, at least publicly, I think communicates that extraterrestrials is still something that's possible, mythic. People are making things up. Elon Musk, same thing. He's going to outer space or sending people into outer space. He also currently, at the time of this recording, is also skeptical to the point of thinking it's just silly ridiculous. So what are you going to do? Just don't hold out for people to tell you what's real. Do your own research. This entire point of this video is not for me to tell you they're real. They are. The point of this video is for me to recommend to you the best places to begin. So that's what we're going to do. Let's begin. So let's just say you say, Adam, I got an hour and a half. I want to sit down. I want to press play, and I want to be convinced. I want to know where the proof is. So I'd say, okay, watch a movie called The Phenomenon. A documentary. I feel like documentary. It's a documentary. Directed by a guy named James Fox, a UFO researcher. He's very prominent, very respected in the field of ufology. He's been around for quite a long time. He made a bunch of documentaries before this one, which came out in 2020. There's Out of the Blue and I Know What I Saw are two other of his, very similar, which came out a handful of years earlier. Might even be one or two more. So it's very well put together. Again, this is not a person who's getting on the cameras telling you what you should believe or what you should think. It's just all accounts. It's all events, flaps as they're often called in this world. And he goes through and it just presents very cohesively, very coherently. I think it's very engaging. It's certainly very, very engaging. The proof is all there, and he just goes through the history through more or less, today or last year. So Phenomenon is an excellent documentary, not the one with John Travolta from 20 years ago. Okay, so after you've watched The Phenomenon, maybe you want to get in something longer. So next up, I would recommend the TV series Unidentified, which came out or was produced from To the Stars Academy, which was founded by Tom DeLonge, the Blink-182 guy. So Unidentified is really, really solid. I was really impressed when I saw that. There's 2 seasons of it. It's led by a man named Lou Elizondo, who was once working in the Pentagon behind closed doors. ATIP. He led this group called ATIP, which was the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program director, and he was doing real work, engaged with trying to understand the UFO phenomenon, and he ended up leaving his position there because, as he's explained it many times, that he felt this is morally compelled, that this is stuff that needs to be out in the public eye, and he didn't want to keep working behind closed doors. So that's what he still does. He's still very, very active, very involved. And I think he's fully sincere and fully credible in his efforts. And we're lucky for the work that he's doing. And also in Unidentified is a man named Chris Mellon, who is in Washington, in the government side of things. And these guys work together a lot. And again, I'm throwing names at you. Sean Cahill is also very instrumental on the show Unidentified. He was on the SS Nimitz. See, now I feel like I'm just starting to throw a lot of names and terms which are not going to mean anything to you if you're just starting out. But I feel it's important to put some it's essential to put some names here, because this stuff is coming through people, and they need to have some degree of credibility, not just trust, but like real credibility before we pay attention to them. And these folks certainly have. So the series Unidentified, they go through the first season something of like the history of UFOs, in the States and around the world. And the second season gets a little bit more investigative. And then he left the show, and he's not doing the show anymore. And he's just out in the world doing this on this mission to make this stuff public, to work towards disclosure, as it's called. So if you enjoy the series Unidentified and you'd like a podcast, I'm a big fan of podcasts. I listen to them a lot. And there's a lot of excellent UFO podcasts as well. The one that I'm going to mention is called That UFO Podcast. It's hosted by a guy named Andy. He has a thick Scottish accent, charming Scottish accent. And it's very straightforward. He has interviews with guests in various fields, various roles of science and researchers and authors about the topic. And if you pop right in, it'll be very current. If you want to go back to an early episode, it hasn't even run for that long. Maybe I think a year, maybe a few years at most. And there's other ones. There's Somewhere in the Skies. There's a bunch more. If I named all the people and options, it would be overwhelming, which is kind of defeat the whole purpose here. So I'm just going to keep it simple and recommend That UFO podcast. So for a book, I'm a big reader and I enjoy the experience of the intimacy of text. The book that I'm going to recommend is called The Day After Roswell. It's written by Lieutenant Philip J. Corso. Colonel Lieutenant Philip J. Corso. And it was published in 1997. So Corso was in the Army. He was in Army intelligence. And then after that, he retired and he went in to work at the Pentagon. And he was, this is really like first-hand accounts. This is really, really significant stuff. He was specifically responsible for taking the debris from the crash that happened at Roswell in 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. You've heard about it. He had essentially what he called his nut drawer, which is a drawer that had this small debris. It had some, wiry stuff, some little broken chips, like little, some material, call it, ultimately, I think it became known as the Roswell foil. So he had this stuff that came from the crash, and his responsibility was to understand it. He has a background in technology as well, is to understand it. So he didn't do this personally. What he came up with the idea for was to give each of these pieces of debris to independent contractors, to these big companies, to have them figure it out and then develop technology. Again, all of this intentions is around the military and around weapons and protecting the country, because at the time, and this is still going on, but at the time, this is specifically in the 60s when he was really involved with doing this, 60s, 70s. There was, the Cold War and the adversaries and all this concern around if our enemies are getting this technology, they're going to, wipe us out. So that was the real motive, is get this out. It's not about taking credit. It's just getting it out, getting it developed so we can have a leg up. But what that means is it's not even just like gun stuff. This is fiber optics. This is what we know of as integrated circuit computer chips. This is infrared vision. There's like a dozen lasers. There's like a dozen things that he was directly involved, taken from the ship. By the way, he did see a dead alien. So while he wasn't at the crash, this is all very solid firsthand accounts. And this is like the backstory. This is like this sort of hidden history of technology. And again, really straightforward look into the world of UFOs, and it's the history that will come to light, but is not currently. And again, for those of you fairly skeptical, you're saying, "Oh, he's just lying. He made everything up." No, that's not possible, because he is a real person, not impersonating, and he's using real people, real presidents, people in the military, people in the Pentagon. These are all real people, and he's listing them all by name. Companies, Monsanto and DuPont. Everything is named, and it's nonfiction. So you can't do that. You can't. It would not be published. It would just not be published. It wouldn't happen. So it's real. This is verifiable, and it's all true. And it's quite astounding. So I highly recommend The Day After Roswell, if you want a book to read. Now, what else do we have? Oh, and I'll also add, to get more than just men here, Leslie Kean is an excellent journalist, and she wrote a book called UFOs. And she's a terrific journalist, writer. You get a little bit more, not that you necessarily notice a difference, but I think it's, I want to like have a well-rounded presentation here. So I think Leslie Kean is someone to look out for as well. So lastly, I'll recommend a website. And this website is called ufopanel.com. It's got a lot, but it's so well put together that I think it will be useful. I'm looking at it right now. And it just goes through with, astronauts, scientists, media, links. It's a lot of links, and there's videos here, official files, YouTube channels, documentaries. He also, of course, includes the James Fox documentaries I mentioned, quotes. It's it's once you get on here, you'll see this is really solid. So in a way, I maybe even recommending this last because it starts to get into the territory of just a lot of information. And I think the other ones I mentioned, while they have a lot of information, they're sort of more bite-sized, right? Like a movie can be very bite-sized, a book can be bite-sized, a show, once you can kind of get into the objective and the hosts and the language of the show, you can sort of sit down a couple of nights and watch these episodes. And this website, UFO Panel, is a great thing as a point of reference and also to share. I think once you're more informed on this topic, and you're not just having conversations where you're saying, well, I think this and I believe this, that it's really about just getting informed. Not to say that we're looking for arguments. I'm certainly not looking for, to argue with people about this. If people are interested, because skepticism can be a wall too. I think healthy skepticism, open-minded skepticism is excellent and it's healthy. But skepticism, when it just becomes a wall or just a commitment to debunking, that's not helpful. So for those people who are interested, once you're informed, feel free to pass these along. I do think this website is really, really excellent. There's a whole list here of sightings, photos and sightings that have been verified, and it even gets into, ancient stuff. So I will say in closing here that again, not to rag on Ancient Aliens. I'm mentioning it because it's another show that's kind of in the public vocabulary. People are aware of it, and can be dismissive. And what I just want to say is that I've watched a handful of episodes of it, and I'm putting it on the same place as Wikipedia and Reddit in terms of holding off on it initially. And the reason I'm saying that is not because what they cover in the show is untrue or fictional or made up or ludicrous. In fact, I think a tremendous amount of the details and the subject matter that overall is talking about extraterrestrials and human history in the past and coexistence in some way or another. Really, I'm just calling them out because on that show, the guests and the people who are on there, I think they're solid. It's really the kind of the voice of the narrator who too often says, some scientists agree or some scientists say, and I don't think that's a reasonable way to present information. I think it always has to be names, people you can look up. So these quotes of like some scientists, or another one that really drives me nuts is when they speculate and they say, well, wouldn't it be possible if, or it's along those kind of lines of, well, what about, if this happens, then what about this? And again, this topic right now it's already kind of too amorphous in the general consciousness of people to be able to just get into this fluffy space of speculation. So Again, I don't want to put down the hard work they put in that show. And it's been around for, I don't know, 5, 6 seasons. Maybe it's more like 20. I don't know. It's been around for a while. Uh, but again, this specifically along the lines of you're interested, you want to learn more. My recommendations are the documentary The Phenomenon, the book The Day After Roswell, the website UFO Panel, that UFO podcast, and the series Unidentified. I think that's a really great place to start. So I hope that's helpful to you. I applaud your interest in learning more. Seriously, it's a really big topic, and when this does start to break through and become something that people are really more aware of, the term for this is disclosure. That's the term, meaning when essentially the government admits that this is real, which they've kind of been doing a little bit in like trickles lately. I think it's going to take a little while for people to like process this big information, because it's truly one of the most significant questions that we have ever had, right? What happens after you die? We learn in the universe. So I think it's a great idea to try and get informed on this. I think there's going to be some time where what I'm doing with my fingers is like the gears spinning and like brain processing time. I've been in this world for a while, and it takes a while to like really kind of come to grips with it. So I think it's a great thing to explore and to try and learn about, and be rigorous with the information, with evidence, with verification, with feeling solid. Because once you're convinced, not just told, you don't want opinions, right? You don't want people telling you. Once you get this is real, then you're in a much more solid place for yourself, for your friends, for your family. When you want to have conversations, I've done this in a small way with close friends and family, because I think it's important for them to start processing this information. So that's it. That's my little spiel, and I hope it's helpful. And if it is, let me know. Get in touch. All right. Take care. Good luck.